England has more ghost stories than anywhere else in the world, and today I'd like to take you somewhere that's one of the most haunted locations in the country. Blanchland is a really beautiful village, a hidden gem in the North Pennines, right on the border of County Durham and Northumberland. It's the kind of place that comes to mind when you think of quaint English villages. The architecture's beautiful, it has a little village shop, one of the cosiest pubs in the country, a sleepy old church, and a nice little gift shop. The only thing that takes away from the atmosphere is perhaps the cars, but other than that, it's like stepping into a bygone age. English King Edward III visited Blanchland on his way up north while campaigning against the Scots in 1327. It's easy to forget that this was once the frontier between two countries at war. If you ever decide to visit, be sure to stop by the White Monk. It was once the old schoolhouse, but it's now a tea room, and it does some really great food. Be sure to try the soup. But why is it called the White Monk? Well, the name Blanchland literally comes from white land, which refers to the white robes worn by the monks who established a monastery here in 1165, which then became an abbey in the late 13th century. These monks were part of an order called the Premonstratensian Order. Bit of a mouthful there. And that order has its origins in northeast France. They're essentially a bit like the Augustinian order, but have stricter codes of conduct. And they were given this land by a man named Sir Walter de Bolbec. As I mentioned, this place was a frontier between two countries at war for centuries, so it would turn out to be a very dangerous place for a monastery to be situated. This place was the stomping ground for the border Reivers, who pillaged and plundered both sides of the border. Not just petty thugs and criminals, though. These people were some of the finest light horsemen in Europe at the time. Now, the border Reivers really didn't have the best relationship with the church. In fact, in one story, a visitor comes to the borders and he asks some locals, "Are there no Christians here?" And he receives the reply, "Nah, we're all Elliots and Armstrongs." One day, a band of Scottish Reivers were in the area, and they were looking for Blanchland Abbey. They knew it was full of riches and treasures, and word reached the monks that the Reivers were coming for them, and so they began to pray to God, hoping that he'd save them. And it would seem that their prayers had been heard, because that day a thick mist descended on the valley, and the Reivers totally lost their way. Now, Blanchland's a place that would be hard to find even in clear sunny weather, so when the Reivers couldn't even see the hands in front of their faces because of how misty it was, then it's easy to understand why they gave up the search for the Abbey and headed back north to Scotland. Word shortly reached the monks that the Reivers were going home. There was much celebration, there was singing, there was dancing, there was praying to God. He had delivered them from this evil menace. A few of the monks climbed up into the tower and, as a gesture of thanks, started to ring the church bells. You can see where this is going now. The Reivers are still pretty close, and they hear the sound of the ringing bells, so they turn back around and follow the sound through the mist, and they find Blanchland, they find the Abbey. The monks that believed God had saved them were now in for a nasty shock. The Reivers reached the Abbey, approached the doors and smashed them down. They stormed inside and put every single monk to the sword, sparing no one. There were rivers of blood inside the Abbey that day, and lots of riches and treasures for the Reivers to take home to Scotland. I was just reflecting in the peace and quiet of this church, how the monks must have actually felt when the Scots crashed through the door. I imagine some of them were hiding in the corners, trying not to be seen, while others begged not to be killed, might have even tried to bargain with the Reivers, saying, "Here's our treasure, just take it." I wonder if any of them actually tried to put up a fight, perhaps. Some of them might have tried to flee, run away. If there was a lot of monks, they might have thought that, oh, they can't kill us all, so maybe we've got a chance to get away. It's so quiet now, but you can imagine back in the day, the screams and the shouting and the crying as this massacre took place. Oh, I've just got to say as well, when you come in from the outside and your eyes adjust to the darkness, the first thing you see emerging from the shadows is this white monk, and especially when you know the legends, then it really does just give you a heart attack if you don't know it's there. So if you do visit this place, which I'd highly recommend, just watch out for him. So the Reivers head north back to Scotland, very wealthy men, leaving the Abbey to burn down. It's a few days before local people go inside and retrieve the smouldering and cut apart bodies of the monks, and they bury them somewhere in a mass grave. Where this grave is, no one's really sure, but a lot of people think that this cross just outside the church marks the spot where the monks were buried. Now that we've looked into the tragic and bloody history of Blanchland, we can start to look into the ghost stories of this place. If you look at the map on the screen, the ghost icon that will pop up will show the 3 locations where the monk ghosts are sighted. So location number 1 is Blanchland Abbey, which is now the church and the churchyard. The second location is the bridge that leads into the village, and the third location is the Lord Crew Arms pub. Now, since I'm already here, I think I'll show you the grounds of the Abbey first. So the Abbey is one of the places where the monks are most often seen. It's usually on cold, dark winter's nights. People can hear chanting and groaning coming from the graveyard. Not too long ago, a woman visiting the village went towards the church door and found herself overcome with grief and sadness. Now she, with no knowledge of the events of the past, realised that something terrible had happened here. It's also said that, usually on the anniversary of the massacre, the Abbey bells ring by themselves. Monks are also known to appear, always at night time, in the grounds of the Abbey, and are seen walking between the gravestones or just standing. So the bridge behind us, the entrance into Blanchland, this is one of the best spots to see a ghost in the village. It's said to be the ghost of the Abbot that glides across the bridge. Sometimes he stops, looks out over the river, or looks out over the village. But why here? What's significant about the bridge? The monks died at the Abbey. They didn't die here. Well, I'd like to talk about the significance of the location. Ghosts and other supernatural and strange occurrences are often found at crossing points, boundaries between places. Think of tunnels, crossroads, bridges, parish boundaries, streams. Very common places to see these kind of things. These threshold places where one place ends and another begins are very common locations for sightings of phantoms, black dogs, witches and devils. This might be because a boundary creates an opening between our physical world and other worlds, leading to things slipping through. This bridge isn't just a boundary because it links one side of the river to another. It's literally found right on the boundary of 2 counties. As you come into the village, you leave County Durham and you come into Northumberland. So clearly there's a lot of energy here. The third and final location of the ghostly monks in Blanchland is the Lord Crew Arms pub and hotel. This building was originally built as the Abbot's Lodge, and over the years there have been many sightings of monks within its walls. Most famously in the 1990s, an American guest staying in the Radcliffe Room woke up to the sight of a ghostly monk sitting at the end of a bed. She reached out to touch it, but it vanished into thin air. And she said that this wasn't a scary experience. She thought that the ghost felt quite peaceful. While the monks haunt the Lord Crew, it's actually another ghost that the pub is most famous for hosting. That's going to have to be a story for another day though. I'll return to Blanchland sometime in the future and stay the night, giving the ghost of Dorothy Forster the attention that she deserves. For now though, I'm going to go in and have a nice pint of local ale and wait for the sun to go down, because there's one more ghost story involving the monks left to tell. This video is going to be somewhat different from my usual content. I'd like to share with you a couple of experiences that I've had in Blanchland over the years, which further adds to the folklore. It's these experiences that led to my deep interest in this village, and why I'm convinced that it's one of Britain's most haunted locations. People in Blanchland many centuries ago said that the hauntings that went on should stop when the roofless chapel was restored and religious services took place again. But evidently, that hasn't been the case. On the 31st of October 2019, I came here at night with a friend. It was dark and cold, as you'd expect, and we walked around the graveyard in hope of seeing something. We'd not seen any of the ghostly monks, and so we began to head home, but on our way out, when we reached the entrance to the graveyard, for perhaps 5 seconds or so, we both heard the sound of monks chanting. We looked at each other in disbelief, and then it stopped. Given this experience, we decided to come back again on Halloween night in 2021. It was close to midnight. Me, my friend, and my brother walked into the churchyard. I remember it was very cold, and as we approached this spot, just at the back of the church, we heard faint whispers. I couldn't make out what they were saying, but it was clearly multiple male voices. We took a slow walk around the graveyard, and I took a few photographs with the flash on. The flash was needed because of how dark it was, and we returned to the entrance of the graveyard and looked at the pictures. And one in particular gave us a bit of a shock. It's not edited in any way. It wasn't our breath in the air, I'm not sure what it was, but it seems that a skull can be seen in the top corner of the image. Perhaps some kind of trick of the light, or perhaps the spirit of one of the monks, who knows. But one thing is for sure, this place is most definitely haunted. Do let me know your thoughts. Do you believe that Blanchland is haunted? Are the monks still unable to rest, or is it all just a series of stories made up to frighten children? I hope you enjoyed watching this video. I certainly enjoyed making it. If you'd like to support this channel, then please do consider helping me out via Patreon. Your financial assistance there helps me with the cost of making content on location like this, and with enough support, I can hopefully do this more full time. A massive thank you to my current patrons, who I really couldn't do this without, including the 3 new supporters, Tom, Holly and Adam. Your help really does mean a lot to me, and I massively appreciate it. Until next time then, all the best.